I do not own any of the art, and all rights remain with their creators. The link is in the description. This is the first time I am sharing my thoughts. I chose the dragon Bahamut because his domains of light and protection fit Izuku perfectly. When Izuku was young, he learned that life wasn't fair. In a world where over 95% of the population had quirks, he was born quirkless. Still, he pushed forward, chasing his dreams. In middle school, he faced bullying from his childhood friend, but it never stopped him from standing up for the weak or his beliefs. This often left him hurt, but he never gave up, which worried his mother, Inko Midoriya. She would see her son come home injured and tried to convince him to pursue something more achievable without a quirk. Yet, he remained determined, and every night, she prayed for his safety. As Inko knelt down to pray, she pleaded with any god that would listen to watch over her son, who always put himself in harm's way. She didn't want to lose him and asked for protection as she finished her prayer and prepared Izuku's lunch for the next day. Little did she know that her pleas were heard by Bahamut, the god of good dragons and justice. Pleased with the honest longing of a mother worried for her child, he decided to meet Izuku to see if he was worthy of his true power. Bahamut left his lair to judge the boy, hoping to find a worthy candidate for his power. Fast forward to the last few months of middle school. As Izuku prepared to leave for school, he heard his mother remind him to take care of himself. Sitting in class, he thought about a new hero whose quirk allowed her to grow to the size of a tall building when his teacher addressed the class about their aspirations to become heroes. Katsuki Bakugo, known as Kaken, declared that he would be the first from their school to get accepted into a prestigious hero academy and become more famous than the #1 hero, All Might. When the teacher mentioned Izuku's application to UA, Kaken's rage was palpable, and he muttered, Deku, a name he had called Izuku since childhood, which meant, worthless. The rest of the class laughed at Izuku, and at the end of class, Kaken and his friends surrounded him, reminding him of his place by threatening him and taking his hero knowledge book. Kaken used his quirk to burn the book and threw it out the window, telling Izuku that if he truly wanted to be a hero, he should jump off the roof and hope for a heroic quirk in his next life. Feeling defeated, Izuku retrieved his book from a puddle, which mirrored his own feelings of being ruined. On his way home, he decided to walk through the woods to clear his mind. Drawn to a cave, he felt a powerful presence that was not hostile. As he entered the cave, lights began to illuminate the walls, leading him deeper inside until he saw a pair of enormous, blue-green eyes with cat-like irises. Overwhelmed by the presence, he dropped to his knees and began to sob, not fully understanding why. Bahamut had been observing this child for months and found him fascinating. Izuku stood up to those stronger than him, enduring beatings without giving up. Now, in Bahamut's lair, the dragon searched Izuku's soul for any signs of hate or anger but found none. Instead, he saw a child who sought the positive in everyone, even those who didn't deserve it. As Izuku wept, Bahamut asked him why he sought power. Was it to best his enemies or defeat his rival? Izuku heard the voice in his mind, prompting him to reflect on his longing for power. Was it to be like everyone else or to emulate his idol, All Might? As he pondered, the voice urged him to answer. He blurted out that he wanted to protect those who couldn't protect themselves, to be a pillar of hope for the weak and a symbol of fear for the wicked. He wanted to save people. Bahamut continued to search Izuku's soul for deception or malice but found none. Satisfied with his answer, Bahamut allowed Izuku to see his smile, which surprised the dragon, as most beings would flee at the sight of him. Curious, Bahamut asked Izuku why he hadn't run when he saw his mouth. Izuku, aware of the intimidating teeth that could easily shred an armored car, replied that if Bahamut truly wanted to eat him, he wouldn't be able to escape. However, he felt a sense of power and peace in the cave. When he looked into Bahamut's eyes, he sensed conviction, pride, and strength, which was why he had begun to sob without knowing why. Bahamut chuckled as the child spoke, finding him to be quite peculiar. He revealed his true form to the boy, deeming him worthy of his power, but cautioned him about the potential for corruption that came with it. Bahamut had faced this issue before and had to intervene with those who misused his gifts. He explained that the boy's body was not yet ready for his power, so he would place a mark on him to strengthen him over time. As he touched the boy's head, the child blacked out from the sudden pain, but Bahamut quickly healed him. He informed the boy that the mark would be engraved in all his bones, initiating the process of preparing him to handle the power. With a final smile, Bahamut left the lair, eager to meet the child's parents. Izuku recalled the last thing he remembered, a dragon's head appearing before him, followed by a deep chuckle that shook the cave. He understood now why the dragon had spoken directly into his mind, otherwise, he might have been overwhelmed. After the dragon's claw touched him, he felt a surge of pain, and then everything went dark. When he awoke, he found himself in a field, questioning whether it had all been a dream. He felt no pain now and remembered the dragon mentioning a mark. Curious, he looked for it but found nothing. Deciding to head home for a closer inspection, he took a shortcut through an alley beneath a bridge. Meanwhile, Inko was busy preparing dinner when she heard a knock at the door. A tall man with jet black hair and silver streaks in his temples stood before her, wearing a long cloak. He asked if she was Miss Midoriya, and upon confirming, she inquired how she could assist him. The man, strikingly handsome, smiled and mentioned her son, causing Inko to panic and ask if he was all right. He reassured her that her son was fine and inquired about her husband, to which she replied that he was working abroad. The man complimented her on raising her child well and then offered a warning. Bahamut was impressed by her dedication to raising Izuku alone. He spoke of the boy's kind nature and warned her about his future. He explained that Izuku had the heart of a dragon, and as he grew stronger, he might struggle to control himself. Inko interrupted, confused, stating that her son did not have a quirk and that he must be mistaken. The man smiled gently, assuring her they were indeed talking about her child. He cautioned her that as Izuku began to harness his power, he would undergo significant changes, including feelings of pride, knowledge, love, and fear. Inko was bewildered by the mention of a heat-cycl, insisting that her son was not an animal. Bahamut continued to smile, reassuring her that these changes would occur. He advised her that when Izuku felt he was losing control, he should retreat deep into the woods to calm down. If he couldn't manage it alone, he should find powerful heroes to accompany him. In a moment of urgency, he handed her a pendant, instructing her to call his name, Bahamut, if she needed help calming her son. After saying goodbye, he took to the skies, transforming back into his true form. Inko was left stunned, clutching the ornate pendant made of gold and silver. As she watched the man take flight, his wings unfurling, she was overwhelmed by shock and fear. By the time he disappeared into the clouds, he had grown to an enormous size, far larger than her apartment building. She managed to close the door before fainting from the experience. As Izuku continued his journey home, he sensed that something was off but dismissed it as a lingering effect of his strange day. He tried to maintain a smile, thinking of what All Might would do. Suddenly, he was caught off guard by a slime monster emerging from a manhole. Time seemed to slow as he realized the danger, but he couldn't move quickly enough to escape. The creature wrapped around him, attempting to force itself into his mouth, claiming it would control his body. Just then, he spotted a familiar silhouette. All Might was there to save him. As Inko watched the news, waiting for her son to return, she saw him and his childhood bully being saved by All Might. When he entered the apartment, she hugged him tightly, recalling Bahamut's words. Out of concern, she asked how he was doing after everything he had been through. To her surprise, he smiled and assured her he was fine, just tired. After being embraced by his mother, Izuku ate and retreated to his room, thinking about how he would begin his training with All Might the next day. He soon drifted off to sleep, dreaming of dragons, where he was the dragon and All Might and his mom were riding on his back. For the past 2 months, Izuku had been training with All Might, and it had been a grueling experience for his body. He felt pain every day, but his mother noted that he had grown a few inches, and she was right, he had grown 3 inches in 2 months. This growth explained the discomfort in his bones. Although he was improving, it wasn't fast enough for his liking. He also trained on his own to reach his goals quicker. While running behind All Might, who was on a Segway with a weighted vest, his body eventually gave out. All Might, impressed by Izuku's physical and analytical growth, noticed the young boy had been overdoing it. After hearing a crash, he turned around to find Izuku on the ground, exhausted. He approached him and asked if he was following his training routine, lifting him up gently. Izuku expressed his determination to improve and be as good as All Might. His mind was racing with ideas, but his body struggled to keep up. All Might, realizing Izuku was heavier than he appeared, reminded him that they would stick to the training plan they had established. On exam day, Izuku had just moved a large piece of debris from the beach, and in a moment of triumph, he climbed on top of it and let out a victorious scream before collapsing. All Might arrived at the beach, hearing Izuku's shout. He was astonished to see that Izuku had cleaned not just the area he was assigned but the entire beach. Once again, Izuku had exceeded expectations. However, when he saw Izuku collapse, he transformed into his muscular form and caught him. Izuku asked if he had done well and if he was worthy of All Might's power. Filled with pride, All Might affirmed that he deserved it and instructed him to eat a piece of his hair to inherit his power. Izuku was taken aback. He had imagined a different process, perhaps something more glamorous than eating hair. Nevertheless, he complied and consumed the hair, feeling no immediate change. All Might told him to let it digest and reminded him to hurry to the exam. Unbeknownst to them, the dragon seal on Izuku's bones was amplifying All Might's power, reinforcing Izuku's bones to handle the new strength flowing into him. When Izuku arrived at the exam area, he spotted Kaken, who looked at him with disdain as he walked by. It was an improvement from their past interactions, but now it was time for the test, and he tripped. Ochako, noticing the boy, thought he was kind of cute and used her quirk to stop him from falling. She apologized, saying it would be bad luck to fall on the first day, introduced herself, and wished him luck before moving on. Izuku was stunned. A girl had touched him to prevent his fall, and her name was Ochako Uraraka. This was the first time he had spoken to a girl. He needed to hurry. As he found his seat next to Kaken, Present Mike began his talk. Izuku couldn't help but fanboy, but soon a tall boy stood up to correct Present Mike and turned to complain about Izuku's muttering. After Present Mike finished, they began the written exam, and Izuku felt confident he had done well. Next, they were taken to a mock city for the practical exam. Izuku hadn't scored any points yet when he heard a loud rumble and felt the ground shake. As the other candidates rushed past him, he heard a scream. Ochako was pinned down. Without thinking, he ran towards her and leaped at the giant robot, shouting, "Smash," as he punched it in what would be its face. Ochako felt a surge of panic as she realized her leg was trapped under a rock, and a giant robot loomed above her. While others fled, one boy with messy hair rushed towards her. In an impressive display, he leaped several stories high, delivering a powerful punch to the robot that sent it staggering back. He looked so brave and fearless. As he began to fall, Ochako quickly used her quirk to free her leg and crawled onto the broken robot. Pushing her limits, she floated him down safely just as he was about to hit the ground. However, she overexerted herself and felt nauseous. Izuku was relieved to see the girl who had saved him was safe, but he felt a sense of failure. He shouted out that he needed at least 1 point, but as the time ran out, he felt his body give in, drifting into unconsciousness. Ochako couldn't understand how someone so strong could earn no points. It didn't make sense to her why he had stopped to help her. She resolved to make things right. Later, Izuku tried to reach All Might, but there was no response. He felt like a failure in front of his mother, who looked at him with concern. Inko had never seen her son so downcast and recalled a warning she had received. She approached him, asking if he was okay. When he replied affirmatively, she felt compelled to share her concerns. She asked if he had been feeling different and mentioned the warning she had received, but Izuku looked at her as if she were imagining things. She decided to leave out the part about the man transforming into a dragon, fearing it would make her seem irrational. She urged him to trust her and promised to heed her warning if he ever felt out of control. Inko then mentioned she was going to get the mail, wondering if she was overreacting. Izuku went to his room to prepare for his workout when his mother called out that a letter from UA had arrived. After a tense moment, Izuku was relieved to learn he hadn't been dropped from the hero course. As he left school, he heard Ochako calling out to them, asking to join him and Ida. She had called him Deku, and he explained how he got that nickname. Ochako apologized for the nickname, saying it gave her a sense of determination, which made Izuku blush. She asked to walk home with them, and they agreed. As the week passed, Izuku and Ochako spent more time together. They had partnered in a combat scenario against Ida and Bakugo, which they won. Izuku enjoyed his time with Ochako, finding her cute, but he was unsure of her feelings toward him. Meanwhile, Bakugo was plotting to put Izuku in his place, determined to show him he didn't belong. During class, Mr. Aizawa announced a trip for rescue training. Upon arriving at the USJ, they met Pro Hero 13, but chaos ensued as villains appeared through a warp gate. Mr. Aizawa instructed them to stay back, but Izuku felt compelled to defend him, knowing he was outmatched. As Mr. Aizawa engaged the villains, Izuku watched in awe, but he knew it was only a matter of time before the heroes would be overwhelmed. Suddenly, Izuku was engulfed in black mist and dropped into the water, where a villain resembling a shark approached him. Just then, he felt something wrap around him. It was Tsuyu's tongue. She had come to his rescue, kicking the villain away and placing him safely in a boat, though Mineta ended up crashing onto the boat, likely having caused trouble again. Tsuyu watched as Midoriya was in danger, and without hesitation, she used her tongue to grab him and kicked the villain away. Gently, she placed Midoriya in the boat while Mineta jokingly commented about her being nice floaties. Annoyed, she pushed him into the boat near Midoriya and climbed up. Curious about their plan, she was impressed by how quickly Izuku formulated a strategy that utilized their quirks effectively, even considering the villains' positions. He was clearly nervous but determined, and Tsuyu admired his humility and bravery. Izuku, eager to share their plan, asked about their quirks and suggested using himself as bait. Once they all agreed, he jumped off the side of the boat, drawing the villain's attention. With a flick of his finger, he yelled for Tsuyu, who leaped into action, grabbing both him and Mineta with her tongue and pulling them toward the shallow water. Mineta began throwing his sticky ball at the villains, and while they managed to escape, Izuku sensed that Eraserhead was in trouble, along with themselves. After being rescued by All Might and the staff, life returned to normal. Mr. Aizawa, looking exhausted, informed them about the upcoming sports festival and emphasized its importance for their futures. As they trained hard, Izuku made sure to spend time with Ochako, enjoying their moments together despite the focus on training. The day of the festival arrived, and while waiting in a large room, Todoroki challenged Izuku, declaring he would win. Izuku acknowledged Todoroki's strength but expressed his determination to succeed. Bakugo, feeling frustrated by Todoroki's challenge to Izuku, noticed how well the round-faced girl got along with him. This sparked an idea in his mind, and he decided to intervene before Izuku could get too close to her. As they entered the arena, Bakugo declared his intent to win. Izuku felt nervous but believed he had a chance. When the signal to start the race was given, he ran with all his might, holding back his power for the right moment. Todoroki used his quirk to free some robots, while Bakugo sped ahead with his abilities. Izuku, however, managed to destroy a targeting robot with a large piece of metal he found. Momo also demonstrated her skills by easily taking down robots. With determination, Izuku chased after the leaders. All Might observed Izuku's strategy, noting the clever use of the metal, but wondered why he continued to carry it. Despite the weight, Izuku was catching up to the front runners. As he crossed the gorges, he used the metal to dig up mines, creating a path and launching himself past others to win the race. He raised his hand in victory, overwhelmed with emotion. The cavalry battle followed, and he teamed up with Ochako, Fumikage, and Mei to advance. Bakugo was frustrated that Izuku had beaten him in the race and was now on a team with Ochako, which only fueled his determination to win her over. When the matchups were announced, he was surprised to find himself facing Ochako. Izuku's first match was against Shinso. As he stepped into the ring, Shinso provoked him, trying to manipulate his mind. Just as Izuku was about to step out of bounds, he noticed a dragon-like outline in Shinso's eyes, which snapped him out of the mind control. He quickly tossed Shinso out of the ring. Next up was Todoroki. After returning to his classmates, he watched as Ochako faced Bakugo. She had helped him, and now he wanted to support her. Ochako, in her waiting area, declined Izuku's offer for help, wanting to prove herself. She smiled at him, promising to see him in the semi-finals before leaving. Izuku returned to watch her fight, feeling pain to see her lose. He tried to cheer her up briefly before heading to the arena for his match against Todoroki. During their fight, he noticed Todoroki was relying solely on his ice, which was hindering him. Despite his injuries, Izuku encouraged Todoroki to embrace his own power, not just his father's. Suddenly, Todoroki unleashed a powerful burst of flames. Todoroki felt a surge of determination as he faced Midoriya, who seemed to be taunting him instead of focusing on winning. Despite the intensity of the moment, Todoroki realized he could be his own hero. As he unleashed his flames, everything around him faded away, leaving only Midoriya in his sights. In that moment, he felt a sense of peace, different from the expectations of his father. However, the recoil from his attack sent him flying back, and he instinctively created a wall of ice behind him for support. All Might observed the scene, recognizing that Midoriya had been trying to save Todoroki all along. As Cementos acted barriers, they were quickly destroyed by the two young heroes. When the smoke cleared, Todoroki stood in the ring, ice forming behind him, while Midoriya had been thrown out, leaving a small crater from the impact. Concerned for Midoriya's well-being, All Might headed to Recovery Girl's office. Inside, Recovery Girl was already tending to Midoriya, who seemed to be in her office more than any other student. As she took X-rays, she noticed unusual markings on his bones. After examining further, she realized that all of his bones bore the same marks, prompting her to seek out All Might for answers. When All Might entered the office, Recovery Girl expressed her concerns about the markings on Midoriya's bones. After showing him the X-rays, All Might decided it was necessary to contact Midoriya's mother, hoping she might have some insight into the situation. Meanwhile, Izuku entered the classroom and noticed Ochako chatting with Mina, Momo, and Tsuyu. He felt a pang of jealousy when he heard Ochako mention that Bakugo had asked her out. Overwhelmed by emotions, he took his seat and lowered his head. Ochako was surprised by Bakugo's request. Initially hesitant, she considered her friend's advice to give it a chance. Momo suggested they could go on one date, and if it didn't work out, she could simply decline a second. Although Ochako had her eye on someone else, she agreed to the plan, hoping it might spark interest from the boy she liked. Bakugo, feeling triumphant, couldn't help but relish the moment, sensing Izuku's disappointment. He felt a sense of victory, even if he tried to play it cool. Mina noticed Izuku's distress and felt guilty for the situation. She approached Kirishima to discuss what Izuku enjoyed doing, hoping to find a way to lift his spirits. Kirishima shared that Izuku loved All Might and often sang in the shower after gym class. Mina decided they needed to help Izuku feel better. After class, Mina gathered Momo and Tsuyu to discuss taking Izuku out for karaoke, believing it would cheer him up. They all agreed, and Mina approached Izuku with the invitation. Although he was reluctant, he eventually agreed. Feeling the weight of his emotions. As they arrived at the karaoke booth, Mina chose a song by LL Cool J, while Momo selected Set Fire to the Rain by Adele. Izuku picked two songs, and Tsuyu chose Whatever It Takes by Imagine Dragons. Meanwhile, Izuku's mother, Inko, had met with All Might at the school after receiving his call about her son. Concerned about the strange markings found on Izuku, she listened intently as Recovery Girl explained the situation. When she saw the X-rays, she recognized the markings and pulled out a pendant given to her by Bahamut, realizing the implications of its connection to her son. Inko felt a chill as she understood the gravity of the situation. She urgently asked All Might where her son was, needing to see him immediately. All Might tried to reassure her, but he also needed her to explain everything, no matter how unbelievable it sounded. Inko recounted her experiences, feeling relieved that All Might believed her. He assured her that UA would handle the situation and that Izuku would be safe. As All Might began to piece together the mystery, he realized that Izuku was far stronger than anyone had anticipated. He quickly reached out to Eraserhead, Midnight, and Endeavor for assistance, knowing that the situation was more serious than it appeared. Izuku's perspective: I listened to the girls sing, and while they did a great job, I felt sad and not in the mood. When it was my turn, I had 2 songs in my head all day, so I decided to sing them. The first was a sad song by We Three Kings, and the next was Say Something by A Great Big World. I got lost in my world while singing, feeling the pain of each song. When I finished, I looked at the girls, who were openly crying. Great, I made them cry too. I needed to leave. I tried to apologize, but the girls tackled me, holding me and telling me they were sorry. I apologized to them and left. The girl's perspective: we listened to Midoriya pour his heart out in his songs, completely lost in them. After the first song, we exchanged glances, our eyes puffy with tears. By the end of the second song, we were crying alongside him. We tackled him, trying to comfort him, but he apologized for bringing us down and then left. Izuku's perspective: I called All Might and asked him to meet me at the woods on the outskirts of town. I ran as fast as I could to get there. When I arrived, I saw All Might, Eraserhead, Midnight, and Endeavor. All Might's perspective: I saw young Midoriya running toward us, and he stopped right in front of us, saying he needed to go deeper into the woods. He began to run again, so we followed him for about 30 minutes. I placed my hands on his shoulders and encouraged him to let it all out. That turned out to be a mistake. Izuku's perspective: as I began to talk, the pain became unbearable. I felt a surge of rage like nothing I had ever experienced before, and I yelled out, questioning why someone had to step on my pride. My thoughts became jumbled, and I felt myself shrinking. All Might's perspective: I heard young Midoriya yell, and suddenly, he was surrounded by flames, transforming into a dragon. He was massive, about the size of an apartment complex, with a huge wingspan. I shouted to Eraserhead to stop him, but his response surprised me. Eraserhead's perspective: it's not a quirk, it's a mutation. I can't stop him. All Might's perspective: this is not good. I shouted for Eraserhead, Midnight, and Endeavor to scatter. We needed to calm him down, not hurt him. Eraserhead's perspective: Midnight and Endeavor jumped in different directions. My quirk wouldn't stop him, and my capture scarf could barely wrap around one leg. I needed to fall back and figure something out. Endeavor's perspective: I thought a quick knockout might work, his scales should protect him somewhat. I launched 3 powerful attacks at his head, but they did nothing, not even a singe for my efforts. I called out to All Might to try punching him since my strongest attacks had no effect. All Might's perspective: this is bad. I heard Endeavor and gave young Midoriya a Texas smash, but it didn't even dent his scales. Izuku's perspective: I saw All Might and Endeavor attacking me, but I barely felt anything. I couldn't see Eraserhead and Midnight, but I could smell them nearby. I tried to talk, but it came out as a roar. Why was everything going so wrong today? Midnight's perspective: I heard the dragon roar, and the sound wave pushed me back. All Might threw Endeavor out of the way, sending him flying at least a football field's distance. If that had been me or Eraserhead, we would have been in serious trouble. I told Eraserhead I had an idea when I heard Endeavor shout. Endeavor's perspective: if he wanted to play rough, then playtime was over. I unleashed my strongest attack, hitting him dead in the chest at point-blank range, but I barely singed his scales. That was my best shot. Izuku's perspective: I noticed a news helicopter when Endeavor attacked me. I tried to say stop, but another roar escaped me, accidentally knocking the helicopter out of the sky. All Might burst out of the woods when Eraserhead shouted about the helicopter. Eraserhead's perspective: Midoriya isn't attacking us, he seems to be trying to communicate, but it sounds like something out of a monster movie. I told Midnight about it. I noticed he wasn't looking at us. Oh no, not good, it's a news chopper, and he just knocked it out of the sky. I yelled to All Might, who shouted to Endeavor and joined him to rescue the news crew. Midnight's perspective: I called out to All Might and asked him to throw me at Midoriya's head, and I would need his jacket afterward. I ripped off my top to maximize my quirk and removed my breathes. When All Might grabbed me, he threw me at Midoriya's head. All Might's perspective: I threw Midnight at young Midoriya's head and stopped attacking, watching her fly toward him. Midnight's perspective: I grabbed his horn as I landed on his head, trying to get my bearings. I moved close to his ear and began talking to him. Izuku's perspective: I saw Eraserhead and Endeavor heading toward the downed news crew, and then Midnight flew toward my face. I heard her soothing voice in my ear, and I started to relax. I thought to myself that I wished she could hear me, and to my surprise, she did. Midnight's perspective: I heard Midoriya in my mind and wished I could hear him too. I told him I could hear him. He tried to apologize, saying he didn't want this to happen. I reassured him that everything would be alright. I asked if I could walk to his face to look at him, and he said yes. Izuku's perspective: I watched as Midnight carefully walked onto my face. I noticed she was only wearing her underwear. Under different circumstances, I might have blushed, but right now, I was entranced by her beauty. I could smell her scent, and I remembered that this was all my fault, which made me sad again. I slowly opened and closed my eyes, wanting to relax. I could feel my tears and started to drift off, standing on my hind legs and gently wrapping my arms around Midnight. Midnight walked onto Midoriya's face, feeling a mix of emotions as she noticed his intense focus on her. Her quirk was at its maximum, capable of calming even the most restless, yet he remained still, a tear forming in his bright green eyes. She could sense his pain. He didn't want any of this. Gently, she reached out to wipe away the tear, which seemed enormous. As he began to shrink, she realized the danger of her situation. If she fell from this height, it could be disastrous. But as he shrank, he stood up and wrapped his front legs around her, preventing her from falling. He returned to his normal size, his face resting against her chest as he fell asleep. All Might draped his jacket over her, providing warmth and comfort. All Might looked up to see Midnight standing on young Midoriya's face. As Midoriya shrank, he wrapped his legs around her, still asleep and sobbing softly. All Might covered Midnight with his jacket, complimenting her bravery for standing on Midoriya like that. Midnight asked All Might if he had heard Midoriya give her permission, but his expression suggested otherwise. She explained that Midoriya had communicated with her telepathically, expressing his reluctance about the situation. Just then, Eraserhead called All Might, informing him that the news crew was safe and that they should leave before more arrived. They agreed to take young Midoriya to his home, ensuring he woke up in a familiar and safe environment. They hopped into All Might's car and drove off. Inko, Midoriya's mother, was surprised to see All Might enter with a woman wearing his jacket, carrying her son, who was peacefully asleep. She asked All Might what had happened, and he instructed her to sit down and showed her to Izuku's room. As he laid her son down, Midnight introduced herself, apologizing for her appearance. She explained that her quirk required her skin to be exposed to put Midoriya to sleep, and they needed to calm him down after he transformed. Inko was shocked to learn that her son had transformed, and she fainted. All Might caught Inko just in time and took her to her room, laying her on her bed and covering her up. He asked Midnight to stay with young Midoriya in case he experienced another panic attack, and she agreed readily, promising to keep an eye on him until morning. As Izuku slowly woke up, he felt as though he was wrapped in a soft embrace. When he opened his eyes, he realized he was in bed with Midnight, and he froze, startled to find himself holding her. She greeted him with a smile, and he felt a rush of embarrassment as he noticed his situation. He quickly fell off the bed, his face turning bright red. Midnight had been excited to stay with him, having noticed his potential the night before. She found herself amused by the situation as he fell off the bed. She got up, moving gracefully, wanting to capture his attention once more. After putting on her briefs and All Might's jacket, she winked at him before leaving the room. Izuku watched her walk past, feeling the temperature in the room rise. When she bent over to pick up her briefs, he felt overwhelmed and embarrassed, his nose starting to bleed. He quickly got dressed and left his room, finding his mother, All Might, and Midnight in the kitchen. Inko asked Midnight why she had locked the door to Izuku's room the previous night. Midnight explained that she wanted to ensure he wouldn't wake up and transform again, which made sense to Inko, who was just concerned for her son. She then wondered how she had ended up in her own room. All Might explained that he had caught her as she fainted and thought it best to take her to bed, correcting himself to clarify he meant her own bed for comfort. Inko felt her face heat up at the implication of his words. Izuku, feeling guilty for the previous day's events, knelt down and bowed his head, apologizing for everything that had happened. He expressed his fear of being expelled from UA, understanding the gravity of the situation. Young Midoriya was reassured by All Might that what happened the previous day wasn't his fault. He had followed his mother's warning closely, and there was no reason for them to expel him. Midnight had explained that he didn't intend for things to go awry, and they believed him. All Might encouraged him to enjoy his weekend, but they needed to have a serious discussion at school with Principal Nizu. As Izuku stood up, his phone began to ring. Meanwhile, across town, Ochako, Momo, Tsuyu, Mina, Kyoka, and Toru were at an ice cream shop discussing Izuku. Mina excitedly recounted how she had been moved to tears by his singing, suggesting that he was singing about Ochako. Tsuyu, while not wanting to pry, agreed with Mina and remarked on how cute Izuku was. Ochako admitted that she liked him and felt butterflies when he looked at her, though she was unsure how to handle her upcoming meeting with Bakugo. Momo suggested that she cancel with Bakugo to avoid wasting his time, and if she planned to take Izuku to karaoke, they all wanted to join to hear him sing again. Toru questioned whether Izuku was really that good, to which Momo replied that she might have kissed him if Mina and Tsuyu hadn't been there. The girls blushed at her admission. Ochako wondered if Izuku would accept her after she had agreed to go out with Bakugo. Mina encouraged her to call Izuku instead, and Ochako, feeling flustered, pulled out her phone. She called Bakugo to cancel, and although he was upset, she hung up and called Izuku, asking him out. When he inquired about Bakugo, she confidently stated she had cancelled for someone better. Bakugo, feeling frustrated and confused by Ochako's change of heart, decided to wait a bit before calling her back, convinced she would reconsider. Izuku smiled at his mother, excited about his plans. He needed to figure out what to wear, but as long as Ochako was with him, he knew he would have a great time. He felt elated that she had chosen him over Bakugo. Ochako was thrilled that Izuku had said yes, but she worried about being alone with him. She considered whether to go with the girls to karaoke or to share her first date with him. Mina urged her to spill the details about their plans, and when Ochako mentioned karaoke, the girls squealed in excitement. Izuku felt nervous about singing in front of Ochako again, recalling how his last performance had made the girls cry. He wanted to choose the perfect song for her. Mina was eager to hear him sing again, hoping he would pick a happy song this time. Momo expressed her determination to make Izuku feel appreciated, while Tsuyu planned to look her best in case Ochako didn't realize what she had in Izuku. Inko, Izuku's mother, was thrilled about her son's first date. She bombarded him with questions about who he was going with, and upon learning it was a girl, she entered full mom mode. Despite the barrage of questions, she helped him get ready, clearly happy for him. After thanking her and giving her a kiss goodbye, Izuku felt grateful for her support. Inko watched her son leave, filled with joy for him as he embarked on this new chapter in his life. Bakugo's perspective: after a disappointing turn of events, Kirishima suggested going bowling, and I agreed. As we walked, I spotted Deku looking sharp. Curiosity got the better of me, and I asked Kirishima to follow. What I saw next made my blood boil. She had chosen Deku over me. It felt unreal. I started to pursue them, but Kirishima placed a hand on my shoulder, reminding me that they were my classmates. I took one last look before we left. Izuku's perspective, I noticed Ochiko, and she looked lovely. I followed her inside and was surprised to find all the girls there, dressed nicely. I felt my cheeks heat up as Ochiko explained they wanted to hear me sing. I agreed, and after the girls performed, it was my turn. I sang "Perfect" by Ed Sheeran and "All of Me" by John Legend, locking eyes with Ochiko. I could see her emotions reflected in her gaze, and when I finished, I asked if they wanted to hear another song. They all eagerly agreed. I poured my heart into the performance, and when it ended, Ochiko jumped up and kissed me. Ochiko's perspective, watching him sing made my heart melt. He sang 2 appealing songs that expressed love, and when he finished, I couldn't help but kiss him. In that moment, it felt like we were the only 2 people in the room. His lips were soft, and I wished that moment could last forever. When we pulled away, I noticed all the girls staring at us, and I felt myself blush. The girls' perspective, as we watched Izuku serenade Ochiko, it was an appealing sight. We all wished it was us he was singing to. The surprise on Ochiko's face when she kissed him was evident, and we felt a mix of happiness for her and sadness for ourselves. Izuku's perspective, after our time together, I walked Ochiko home. When I got back, my mom was awake, and I shared that I had a great time. She smiled and mentioned a meeting with the principal on Monday. I went to my room, drifting off into sweet dreams. However, when I woke up, something felt off. I called for my mom, and she looked at me differently, similar to how Ochiko had. Inko's perspective, when my son called, I entered his room and was overwhelmed by his presence. I felt an urge to be closer to him, which was confusing. I knew I had to leave the room, even though I didn't want to, so I called All Might for help. All Might's perspective, Inko reached out to me, expressing concern about young Midoriya's changes. I decided to call Midnight as a precaution and asked her to meet me quickly. I explained that Midoriya was going through a significant transformation, and we needed to act fast. Midnight's perspective, I jumped into All Might's car, asking what was happening. He informed me that Midoriya was experiencing a change, and his mom was struggling to maintain distance. I was puzzled about why I was needed. All Might's perspective, I explained that if Midoriya's condition escalated, I would need your help to manage the situation. It was a difficult position, but it was the best plan we had. Inko's perspective, holding onto a pendant, I called out to Bahamut, seeking guidance on how to help my son. To my surprise, he responded and explained that Midoriya would need to mate or undergo a significant change. Inko's perspective, I was taken aback by the revelation. I needed to inform All Might about what Bahamut had said. All Might's perspective, we decided to make a quick stop at the drugstore first. Midnight looked at me, confused. Midnight's perspective, I questioned why we were stopping when we were in a hurry. All Might explained that he needed to get me some emergency supplies. I was taken aback by his statement. All Might's perspective, I felt a bit embarrassed but insisted it was necessary to prevent a more complicated situation. If Midnight wasn't willing, I would find someone else who could help. Ochiko leaned in to kiss Izuku, who pulled her closer as they shared a tender moment. When she broke away slightly, he opened the apartment door for her to enter. He led her into his room, where they kissed again, and as they pulled apart this time, he slowly took off his shirt. Ochiko began to unbutton hers, but he gently placed his hand over hers and said, "Let me do this for you." As he helped her, she leaned in and kissed his neck, feeling a rush of affection. Once he finished, she revealed a pink bra, which he quickly asked her to remove. She complied, and he began to caress her gently, savoring the moment. As their connection deepened, she felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She pulled down his shorts, revealing his All Might boxers, which seemed to strain against the fabric. She removed her skirt, now in pink panties, and he leaned in to take them off as well, gently laying her down. Remembering advice about being considerate, he took his time, ensuring she felt comfortable. They shared loving glances, and she expressed her longing to reciprocate his affection. As she took off his shorts, she hesitated for a moment but then focused on giving him pleasure, trying her best to make the moment special for both of them. As they continued to explore their feelings for each other, they transitioned into a deeper connection, sharing whispers of affection and promises. They moved through various positions, each moment filled with trust and intimacy. Eventually, they found themselves in a comfortable embrace, wrapped in each other's warmth. Later, as Izuku held her close, he felt a strange sensation in his back. To his surprise, wings emerged, wrapping around her protectively as they drifted into a peaceful slumber. He felt a sense of belonging, knowing she had welcomed him into her life. Meanwhile, All Might was concerned about the situation and decided to check on them. He quietly entered the apartment, finding Izuku asleep under a green blanket. However, as he got closer, he realized the blanket was actually a wing, and there was another head nestled beneath it. Izuku woke up, instinctively protective of Hachiko, and warned All Might to stop approaching. All Might recognized the seriousness in his tone and took a step back, assuring him he was only checking on his well-being. Izuku confirmed that Hachiko was safe with him and explained their bond, which felt profound and unbreakable. All Might, sensing the gravity of the situation, wondered how to navigate this new dynamic without causing conflict. He asked Izuku if this bond was common with all his relationships, to which Izuku replied that it was unique to Hachiko. The two shared a moment of understanding, each recognizing the depth of their connection. Izuku was taken aback by All Might's question, his usual smile still in place. It seemed that All Might could see through to his emotions. Deciding to be honest, he expressed his concern for both Izuku and Hachiko, mentioning that their mothers were worried about them too. He reminded Izuku about the meeting with Principal Nizu later that day. Hachiko lived alone in an apartment near UA, and she had called her parents to assure them she was okay. As she began to wake up, Izuku gently kissed the top of her head and informed her that they needed to get moving soon. She requested 5 more minutes, and he smiled at her, then asked All Might for some privacy. All Might nodded and stepped out. Returning to Inko's room, All Might noticed Midnight struggling to walk. He called Principal Nizu to update him on Izuku's situation, particularly his protectiveness over Hachiko, and to inform key staff members. He helped Midnight up and inquired about what had happened. Midnight appreciated that Izuku had folded her clothes and placed them by the bed. As she got dressed, she struggled to regain her strength. When All Might asked what had happened, she simply replied that it was Izuku's doing and requested help getting to the car. As Hachiko regained her senses, she felt Izuku's kiss on her head and smiled up at him. She felt a bit uncomfortable and asked if he had stayed with her all night. He grinned and reminded her that she had said it was his new home. She mentioned that her blanket was warm, and he frowned. Concerned, she placed her hands on his face and reassured him that they belonged to each other and there was nothing to worry about. He agreed, and she noticed that the warmth she felt was actually his wings. She touched them, marveling at how nice and warm they were. Izuku felt her touch and thought about retracting his wings. Which he did, leaving her exposed. He noticed the look in her eyes, a mix of longing and discomfort. When he asked if she was all right, she admitted that she was sore and her legs were numb. He reassured her, lifted her off him, and laid her down gently before getting dressed and carrying her into the hallway where All Might was assisting Midnight. Hachiko observed Midnight and noticed her belly appeared even more swollen than hers. She contemplated asking Izuku about it, realizing that if he had done the same to Midnight before she arrived, things could have been much worse. She felt a need to talk to Midnight. Izuku asked All Might to stop by Hachiko's apartment quickly, and All Might agreed. Once they arrived, Izuku rushed to dress Hachiko and then returned to the car. Upon arriving at UA, he spotted his mother and rushed out to embrace her. Midnight waited for Izuku to exit the car before handing Achiko morning after pills with a bottle of water, asking if she wanted to be a mother at this point. She requested All Might to step out of the car for a private conversation. Looking down at their matching bellies, she sighed and acknowledged that Izuku had certainly impacted her too. Achiko confirmed that Izuku had indeed affected Midnight, sharing that while she was sore, he had been gentle. Midnight's expression was a mix of relief and frustration as she began to explain what had happened. She recounted being called to help calm Izuku down, explaining that they had agreed she would intervene if things escalated. However, things had taken a turn, and she had ended up passing out. Midnight apologized to Achiko for not keeping her away from Izuku. Listening to Midnight, Achiko took a pill and drank some water, feeling grateful that Midnight had been there first. She thanked her for being honest and for protecting her more than she realized, acknowledging that Izuku was her first and things could have been much worse without Midnight's intervention. All Might then called Izuku aside to discuss the upcoming internship program, informing him that he would be training under Gran Torino. He cautioned Izuku not to use his dragon abilities, emphasizing the importance of control and trusting him to rely on his quirk for now. As Achiko walked with Izuku toward class, she spotted some girls waiting for her and left him to talk with them. Suddenly, Bakugo approached, grabbing her arm and yelling about their breakup, only to be interrupted when Izuku punched him through the door, following right after. Izuku watched as Kaken grabbed Achiko, and a surge of anger overcame him. Without thinking, he punched Kaken, who flew through the door. Izuku followed him inside, finding Kaken knocked out. He shouted at his unconscious form, warning him never to touch Achiko again. Just then, he felt a familiar set of arms wrap around his waist. It was Achiko, who reassured him that she was all right and urged him to calm down and go with All Might. All Might had been walking with young Midoriya when he suddenly dashed into a room. Hearing the door crash open, he quickly followed and placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. As Izuku began to take deep breaths, Achiko hugged him from behind, instantly calming him down. He smiled at her, kissed her head, and they left the room together, heading to the principal's office. Meanwhile, All Might checked on Bakugo and asked Yaoyorozu to fetch Recovery Girl while he walked with Midnight, who was trying her best to keep up. The girls had seen Achiko and wanted to warn her about Bakugo when he unexpectedly grabbed her arm. They had never seen Midoriya move so quickly. He defended Achiko without hesitation, shouting a warning that made them wish he would protect them too. Inko observed her son's childhood friend grab the girl he had introduced her to just moments before. When Izuku attacked Kaken, it was swift and decisive. She knew she would need to talk to him about it later, but thankfully, All Might and Achiko managed to calm him down. They continued to the principal's office, where they were greeted by Principal Nizu and several other teachers. Nizu asked Inko to sit and explain everything in detail, which she did. He then turned to All Might for his account. All Might recounted how Izuku had transformed for the first time and how even the strongest attacks from Endeavor had no effect on him. It was Midnight who finally calmed him down and helped him return to normal. Midnight explained that Izuku hadn't attacked. He had tried to ask them to stop, but it had come out as a roar. She described how he communicated with her telepathically and apologized before losing consciousness. As Izuku listened to his teachers discuss that night, he noticed an older hero assessing him. He hoped that this hero, who had been All Might's mentor, wouldn't think poorly of him for his actions. His thoughts were interrupted by Principal Nizu, who informed him that he would be training with the older hero for a week. Izuku glanced at his mom one last time before leaving the room for his training. Gran Torino had been pushing Izuku hard, but he had to admit that Toshinori had chosen a remarkable student. Izuku adapted quickly due to his extensive research on heroes and was dedicated to his training. Gran Torino believed that once Izuku could control all his power, he would become a formidable opponent for villains. As they prepared for patrol, a Nomu suddenly burst through the train. Gran Torino yelled at Izuku to stay on the train while he engaged the creature, trying to keep it away from populated areas. Izuku saw Gran Torino confront the Nomu and, thanks to his training, he was able to move out using one for all without injuring himself. He knew Lita was nearby and that the hero killer was also in the area. Following his instincts, he found Lita on the ground and pushed himself harder to confront Stain. He managed to knock Stain back halfway down the alley, positioning himself between Lita and the hero killer. Despite Stain's pleas to leave, Izuku insisted that a true hero intervenes even when it's not their business. He sent a mass text to his friends to inform them of his location and prepared to fight. Stain, surprised by the sudden attack, acknowledged Izuku's determination. He recognized that a true hero does what is right, even without the promise of fame. As he drew his sword, he lost sight of Izuku, who was quick and agile. Izuku managed to avoid 2 strikes, relying on his instincts. He pressed the attack, staying just out of Stain's reach while landing blows. Just then, ice trapped Stain's leg, allowing Izuku to strike again and knock him out. Todoroki appeared around the corner, and Izuku thanked him for the help. They secured Stain's weapons, and Lita was finally able to stand. As they dragged the hero killer to the street, they were surrounded by heroes who called for the police. Gran Torino scolded Izuku for his recklessness, but just then, blood fell onto a hero as Izuku was suddenly yanked into the air. As the hero killer, Stain, regained his senses, he witnessed a young boy being captured by a monstrous creature. In a swift motion, he cut the rope binding the child and, in a moment of desperation, liked the blood from a fallen hero to cancel its quirk. As the creature began to plummet, Stain struck decisively, ensuring the boy's safety. He recognized this child as someone worthy, someone the world needed, just like the legendary All Might. He resolved to rid the world of false heroes and villains. Stain's anger surged as he faced another false hero. Endeavor. He felt a powerful urge to eliminate them all, especially Endeavor. Endeavor, sensing the presence of the hero killer, prepared to attack but was momentarily paralyzed by Stain's intense killing intent. In that moment, Midoriya struck, landing a powerful blow that knocked Stain out. Endeavor was left in awe of Midoriya's transformation in the woods, recalling how the boy had shrugged off his best attack and even withstood All Might's power as if it were nothing. He turned to Gran Torino, questioning why Midoriya was with the hero killer. Gran Torino, still recovering from the shock of the quick events, explained the situation to Endeavor just as the police arrived to detain Stain. They all headed to the hospital for checkups. Once there, the chief of police approached Gran Torino to discuss the necessary steps to manage the situation, and Gran Torino agreed to the plan before entering the room with the students. Midoriya was chatting with Ida and Todoroki when Gran Torino entered, chastising him for putting himself in danger and announcing that he would train him even harder upon their return. The chief of police then explained the need to mislead the public about the hero killer, assuring them that Endeavor would take the credit to protect them. Midoriya felt grateful for the acknowledgement. Afterward, Gran Torino pushed Midoriya through rigorous training, testing his limits and resilience. Despite the exhaustion, Midoriya persevered, determined to remember everything he learned. As he left, Gran Torino reminded him to stay in touch. Midoriya thanked Gran Torino and limped away, reflecting on the training. He was eager to see Ochako again, hoping for a chance to connect. Suddenly, All Might called out to him, urging him to get into the car for an important discussion. All Might asked Midoriya why he hadn't transformed into a dragon during the fight with the hero killer. Taken aback, Midoriya explained that he didn't know how to control that form and feared losing control like he had in the past. He admitted that the power frightened him, especially when he felt anger. All Might urged him to promise not to use that power until he could control it, acknowledging the danger it posed without proper training. Midoriya agreed, committing to refrain from transforming for the time being. All Might informed Midoriya that he would continue training him, just as Gran Torino had, and that they needed to speak with Principal Nizu, as Midoriya would be late for class. Meanwhile, Ochako was in class discussing internship training with her friends when Bakugo approached, furious about Midoriya's actions. He threatened Midoriya, claiming he would never satisfy Ochako's needs. Ochako smiled and warned Bakugo that if he ever laid a hand on her again, she wouldn't stop Midoriya from defending himself. She also confidently stated that Midoriya was more than capable in that regard, drawing laughter from her friends. Bakugo, feeling insulted and enraged, stormed off, vowing to crush Midoriya. He couldn't believe what Ochako had said and felt determined to prove himself as the best. The girls listened to Ochako stand up to Bakugo, and Kyoka fainted from laughter at the exchange. The atmosphere turned bright red as they processed the bold statements. When Eraserhead entered the classroom, they quickly took their seats, the tension still lingering in the air. Eraserhead informed the class that Midoriya was with the principal and would join them shortly. He also reminded them about their upcoming exam just as Midoriya walked in. The atmosphere shifted as he noticed the girls blushing and staring at him. Stepping out briefly, Eraserhead called Midnight to ensure everything was fine. A minute later, she rushed into the classroom, took a few deep breaths, and reassured him that there was nothing to worry about. When he returned, the girls were still captivated by Midoriya. As Midoriya entered the classroom, he spotted Ochako, which brought a smile to his face. However, he quickly noticed the attention he was receiving from the girls, all of whom were blushing. Confused, he also felt the intense glares from Bakugo and Mineta. Eraserhead had stepped out again, and shortly after, Midnight had come in and left just as quickly. Eraserhead returned, took attendance, and then All Might entered the room. All Might, looking as cool as ever, instructed the class to change into their hero costumes for a test. Midoriya grabbed his costume case and, feeling a bit awkward with the boys' eyes on him, decided to change in a bathroom stall. Once he emerged, Mineta confronted him, asking if he had been NTMT with Ochako. Midoriya glanced around to see Kaminari, Todoroki, and Kirishima nearby, feeling his face heat up. He realized that Ochako must have shared something with Mina, who was known for her inability to keep secrets. He admitted to Mineta that he had, which only fueled Mineta's anger. Mineta expressed his frustration, feeling it was unfair that Midoriya got to be close to Ochako. In a moment of anger, Midoriya found himself gripping Mineta by the throat against the wall, warning him to respect Ochako and not to speak about her inappropriately. Kirishima and Todoroki approached, urging him to calm down. Midoriya released Mineta, reminding him he had been warned. Kaminari checked on Mineta while Kirishima and Todoroki asked Midoriya why he had reacted so strongly. He explained that while he could handle teasing about himself, he couldn't tolerate disrespect towards Ochako. Kirishima praised his protective nature but advised him to keep his cool. Bakugo approached Mineta, confirming the rumors about Midoriya and Ochako, which only fueled his irritation. As they headed to the test, Bakugo noticed that Midoriya was sitting next to the frog girl, who was flirting with him, while Ochako was giggling with another girl. This only heightened Bakugo's frustration. Once they arrived, All Might announced a race across the city to find and rescue him. Midoriya was pitted against Mina, Lita, Ojiro, and Siro, and they split up to cover different areas. At the sound of the horn, Midoriya launched himself into action, utilizing his training to speed towards the city center. As he raced, his classmates watched in awe, noting how his movements resembled Bakugo's. Midoriya spotted All Might and picked up his pace, ultimately winning the race, followed by Siro, Lita, Mina, and Ojiro. All Might praised their performance and called for the next group of students. After class, Midoriya learned he would begin training the next day. He approached Ochako, asking if she would like to go out that evening, causing a chorus of "os" from the girls and making him blush. Ochako smiled brightly at Midoriya's invitation and agreed, excitedly mentioning that she would choose the location. Just then, Momo tugged at her shirt, having overheard their conversation. Momo, knowing they were in a relationship, expressed her longing to join them, revealing she had a karaoke booth reserved for the night, which also served dinner. She mentioned how much she loved Machi, which made Ochako even more enthusiastic. Midoriya smiled at Ochako, reassuring her that it was okay with him. He noticed her concern about the cost, but he assured her he would cover it since he had asked her out. The girls chimed in, expressing their disappointment that only Momo and Ochako would hear Midoriya sing again. When he asked if they would like to join, they all eagerly agreed. Mineta, feeling left out, protested, insisting that he and the other guys wanted to come too. Momo decided to call and reserve the karaoke booth right away, already planning the dinner menu and ensuring to special order mochi for Achiko. She was excited to hear Midoriya sing again and felt it was important to discuss his relationship with Achiko. Izuku reflected on how things had turned out. He had hoped for a date with Achiko, but he had already agreed to join the girls after Momo had saved him. She had mentioned that the place she rented was only big enough for 7 people, which had left Mineta upset and running away. Bakugo was frustrated. He couldn't believe Izuku was going on a date with all the girls in their class. He asked Momo which karaoke venue they were going to. She told him it was called Karaoke Barn, a high-class place that served dinner and had large private rooms. Bakugo could only afford a small booth, so he invited Kirishima and Mineta to join him, determined to find out what all the fuss was about. As Izuku picked up Achiko for their date, he complimented her on how pretty she looked and expressed his excitement for their time alone later. They took a taxi to Karaoke Barn and were scooted to their booth, where Momo was already waiting. Achiko felt a rush of warmth at Izuku's compliment, making her blush. She was thrilled about their plans for later, but when they arrived, Momo asked to speak with her privately for a moment. Izuku smiled and allowed them to step outside. Momo looked at Achiko and confessed her feelings for Izuku. She admitted to being envious of the way he looked at Achiko and revealed that she had somewhat hijacked their date. Achiko was surprised to learn that Momo felt this way. She smiled and reassured Momo that she loved Izuku but would be open to sharing him. She promised to discuss it with him later. As Izuku waited for the girls, he browsed through his song choices, feeling nervous as they all entered the room. He pulled out a chair for Achiko, and they settled in for a light conversation over their meal before the singing began. The girls lined up to pick their songs, and once again, Izuku found himself last. Achiko went first, singing, Alone, Restaurant, by Alan Walker. As Izuku listened, he felt tears welling up in his eyes. After she finished, he walked up to her, lifted her up, and kissed her deeply, not caring who was watching. The other girls were taken aback, wondering why Izuku only looked at Achiko that way. After the kiss, he apologized for getting emotional. Holding Achiko's hand, Izuku shared that he had felt alone for much of his childhood and had been bullied until high school. Now that he had her, he no longer felt that way. Achiko was moved to tears, realizing how much Izuku had endured while always appearing strong. As the night continued, Bakugo watched from the booth, frustrated that the room was soundproof. He saw Izuku kiss Achiko and felt a surge of anger. He joined Mineta and Kirishima, plotting his next move. When it was Izuku's turn to sing, he addressed everyone in the room, sharing that he had been going through many changes and that his emotions often showed in his eyes. He sang Demons by Imagine Dragons, and after finishing, he looked at Achiko and smiled, telling her that he thought he would always be alone until he found her. His second song was To Die For by Sam Smith, and as he sang, he locked eyes with Achiko, who began to cry again. The other girls watched with tears in their eyes, feeling the depth of his emotions. Once he finished, Izuku walked over to Achiko and said it was time for them to leave. She took his hand, and as they headed out, she turned back to Momo with a smile, promising not to forget to ask him about sharing. They got a cab to her apartment, and once inside, she leaned in to kiss him. Izuku pulled away just long enough to let his mom know he was okay and staying with a friend. As they began to kiss again, he lifted her dress, revealing an appealing set of underwear. He felt himself getting overwhelmed with emotion. She noticed his excitement and playfully pulled down his breathes, teasingly engaging with him. As their connection deepened, he held her close, and they shared a moment filled with passion and intimacy. Eventually, they found themselves in a comfortable position, wrapped in each other's warmth, both feeling a mix of pleasure and affection. Later, he lay back, extending his wings to cover them both as they drifted off to sleep. When his alarm went off, he woke to find her resting on top of him. A wave of panic washed over him as he remembered she hadn't taken her pill the night before. He gently woke her and asked her to take it, relieved when she smiled and assured him she had already done so. She then hesitated before asking him a question. Deku, I want to ask you something, and please don't take this the wrong way. Momo really likes you and wants to be a part of your life. Do you want to be with her too? He was taken aback. Are you kidding? No, I'm not. That's why she invited us out last night, to ask me to bring it up to you. He looked at her earnestly. Baby, you know I love you, right? You're my woman. I don't need other lovers. The second song I sang spelled it all out for you. I know that, honey, but I can tell you're still feeling excited. The only reason you stopped last night was because I passed out. I'll always be your number one, but I want you to consider giving her a chance. He took a deep breath. Achiko, I love you. I'll do this for you because I care about you, but there's one thing I need before I agree to this. What's that? She asked curiously. I want to meet your parents. He glanced at the time and felt a rush of panic. He had to meet All Might in 30 minutes. He quickly kissed Achiko, tucked his wings back in, got dressed, and dashed out the door, racing home to change before heading back to meet All Might. Young Midoriya, you're just on time. Get ready because this is going to be intense, All Might said with a serious tone. I'm ready, All Might, he replied, steeling himself for the challenge ahead.